She told me she needed a real man, then set out to destroy everything we built. One quiet evening turned into a storm of betrayal, lies, and a twisted campaign to ruin my life. It wasn't just that she cheated, it was a setup, and I was the final piece in her perfect game. By the time I realized the truth, she'd already rewritten our story and turned the world against me. But sometimes, karma needs a little push, and this time, I wasn't backing down. The warm spring evening wrapped the small town of Alden in a soft, golden glow as I returned home after a grueling day at the office. The scent of freshly baked bread, usually comforting, now felt almost out of place, distant, even unwelcome. A single lamp flickered in the living room, casting elongated shadows that danced across the walls. On the sofa, curled up beneath a worn-out quilt, sat my partner, Clara. Her usually bright eyes were dull today, as if a heavy cloud had settled over her, her gaze distant, lost in unspoken thoughts. I dropped my briefcase onto the floor and massaged my temples in exhaustion. "Hey, Clara," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, even though something in the air felt off. Clara jumped slightly at the sound of my voice, her head lifting slowly. In her eyes, I saw something unfamiliar. A strange mixture of guilt, fear, and perhaps contempt. It tightened my chest in an instant. Sense of dread creeping up. "Hey," she answered softly, and I detected the tiniest quiver in her voice. I sank down next to her, trying to put my arm around her, but she shifted away, a barely perceptible movement that pricked at me more sharply than I expected. "Is something wrong?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them, the anxiety growing heavier by the second. Clara was silent for a long time, staring at her hands, which were fidgeting with the fabric of the quilt. Eventually, she raised her gaze to mine, and I saw her eyes glistening with tears. "I have to tell you something, Ben," she whispered, and her words washed over me like a sudden wave of ice-cold water. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for her to continue, although my mind raced, desperately trying to come up with less painful explanations. Maybe she was dealing with personal issues or family problems? But deep down, I already knew the truth, something I didn't want to hear. "I was unfaithful," she said, her voice breaking. The words hit me like a physical blow, each one sharp and venomous. The world seemed to blur around me. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear anything over the rush of blood in my ears. Betrayal? Clara? Me? It all felt like some twisted, terrible mistake, like a nightmare from which I would wake up any moment. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. Pain, rage, disbelief, confusion. Every emotion collided in a brutal storm. How? Why? After all we had shared, after 2 years of love, shared dreams and plans for the future? Clara's gaze met mine, and in it there was no remorse. Instead, there was a strange sense of triumph mixed with an undeniable guilt. "I needed someone stronger, Ben," she said, a faint smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. "Someone more confident than you." I was speechless, stunned by the sheer cruelty of her words. Was this how she had seen me all along? Someone unworthy of her? At that moment, her phone buzzed. Clara glanced at the screen, her expression softening, and she hurried off to the window to answer. I heard her murmuring softly, her voice filled with laughter, the kind she used to give me. And in that moment, something in me snapped. All the pain, all the anger poured out. I stood up, a cold determination filling me. I could no longer stay here, breathing the same air as this woman who had betrayed me. I walked quietly into the bedroom, grabbed my old travel bag, the one I kept for spontaneous getaways. With quick, sharp motions, I packed my things: some shirts, jeans, a jacket, toothbrush, charger. I grabbed my tablet from the nightstand, throwing it into the bag without hesitation. When I returned to the living room, Clara was still on the phone, her back turned to me. She didn't even notice that I was packing. I took my coat from the rack by the door, grabbed my car keys from the small table in the hallway. Passing by the kitchen, I paused for a moment and glanced at Clara. She had finished her call and now looked up at me, her face pale, confusion and anxiety written all over it. "Where are you going?" she asked, her eyes flicking to the bag and coat. I stopped in the doorway and looked at her. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see disdain in her eyes. I saw fear. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice calm but firm. "And you can keep this place. I'm sure your stronger man will help you pay the rent." She started to speak, but I didn't wait for her to finish. I stepped out, closing the door behind me with a soft click. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably messages from mutual friends who had known all along and had chosen to stay silent. I stepped out into the chilly night air, taking in a deep breath. For the first time in ages, I felt a sense of relief, though the pain still lingered. With it, there was a strange freedom. I climbed into my car, started the engine, and drove off into the night. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay where I had been betrayed and humiliated. I turned off my phone, feeling a flicker of hope for the future rising within me. Maybe sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. And when I looked back, I realized that perhaps I had never truly owned what I thought I had lost. Morning arrived with the harsh beep of an alarm clock in a modest motel room on the outskirts of Alden. After driving aimlessly through the night, I felt exhausted, drained, and hollow. Yet there was a strange fire building within me, a sense of resolve. I wasn't going to hide in pain anymore. It was time to face the truth and move forward. I turned my phone on, which I had kept off all night. It lit up with dozens of notifications, 32 missed calls, 47 text messages. Most were from Clara. There were also messages from Michael and Sophie, our so-called loyal friends, and several unknown numbers. I scrolled through them quickly, barely registering their content. Their words no longer meant anything. But one notification caught my eye, a social media post with a storm of comments beneath it. Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened Instagram. What I saw made my blood run cold. Clara had begun a smear campaign against me. Her Instagram stories painted me as a monster, controlling, jealous, emotionally manipulative, and a man who isolated her from her friends. Each post was followed by hundreds of sympathetic comments from people I once considered friends. The worst of it was a tearful video where she claimed that I had financially exploited her, forcing her to split every bill while I secretly hoarded money for myself. This was particularly absurd, considering Clara made far more than I did and had been the one to insist on the shared expenses. Rage boiled inside me. How could she lie like this? How could people, our friends, believe such monstrous lies? Just then, a message arrived from Nadine, a colleague I had known for years. "Ben, you should check your email. There's something going around about you at work." I opened my inbox and found a company-wide email about creating a safer work environment. It contained a veiled reference to the recent disturbing behavior of certain employees, with no names mentioned. But the timing was more than suspicious. Clara had even reached my workplace. I should have been furious, desperate to defend myself. But instead, all I felt was cold curiosity. How far would she go with this? The answer came soon enough. The next day, I went to our usual cafe, the only place I thought might remain neutral. I was wrong. The barista, who had always been friendly, looked at me with clear disdain, as if I were something vile. Later, I learned that Clara had become a regular there, telling anyone who would listen about her victimhood. Things only got stranger from there. While rummaging in the storage room, I bumped into Emma, Clara's best friend. Or so I thought. She looked nervously over her shoulder, as though she was scared to be seen with me. "Ben, you need to be careful," she whispered, grabbing my arm. "You don't know Jay, right? He's not just her boss. His wife, she's influential. And Clara is telling her you're dangerous." I was shocked. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma's eyes flickered nervously. "Because this isn't the first time. Before you, there was another guy. Same thing. Clara and Jay did the same thing to him. He had to leave town." That revelation turned everything upside down. That night, I spent hours on the internet, researching this other guy. Mark, something like that. He really had vanished around the time Clara joined the company. The next morning, our landlord called to inform me that Clara had tried to have me removed from the lease, claiming I abandoned the apartment. When that failed, she told him I had been threatening her. He called to warn me, mentioning that his sister had gone through something similar years ago. But the real shock came later. A message request arrived from an unfamiliar account. The profile picture was of a sophisticated woman in her 40s, wearing lavish jewelry. The message read, "We need to talk about my husband and your girlfriend. Coffee tomorrow. Signed, Mrs. J." That meeting was set for an hour later, and something told me the story of Clara's real man was about to take an even more complicated turn. The days that followed the party felt like a blur, each one dragging on endlessly, as if the world outside had somehow stopped moving. Emily's presence in my life had become nothing more than a shadow. Her lies had been exposed, her reputation shattered beyond repair, and yet a strange emptiness lingered within me. I should have felt vindicated, but instead, I found myself drowning in a sea of questions, haunted by the sudden realization that I had been living in a world built on deception. The morning after the party, I woke up to a message from Mrs. J. Her text was brief, but held a weight I could feel even through the screen. We need to meet. I've discovered something important. I didn't hesitate. The odd sense of relief I'd felt the night before. The truth was that my life had become a puzzle with a missing piece, and I needed to know what that piece was. I agreed to meet her in the same coffee shop I had visited earlier, the one that had once been my refuge, but now seemed to be nothing more than a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a table by the window, her tablet in front of her. She looked even more poised than I remembered, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the night before. She didn't look up immediately, but when she did, her expression was one of determination, mixed with something else, concern, perhaps, or fear. "Sit down, Alex," she said, her voice calm, but laced with urgency. "I've been digging deeper into Emily's past. What I found, it changes everything." I sat, intrigued and a little apprehensive. "What do you mean?" Mrs. J leaned forward, lowering her voice. "It's not just about her affair with Jay, or the manipulation she's been pulling on you. There's something far darker at play here." She tapped her tablet, bringing up a document that made my stomach tighten. It was an old police report. I stared at the screen, the name on it unfamiliar, yet somehow chilling. "Who is this?" I asked, pointing to the name of a man linked to the case. "His name is Marcus Lowe," she replied. "He was another of Emily's victims, but his story didn't end like yours. Marcus disappeared a few years ago, just like that other guy you heard about. He was a rising star in a tech company, someone with real potential, until he crossed paths with Emily." I stared at the document. "What happened to him?" Mrs. J's gaze hardened. "That's what I need you to help me uncover. You see, Marcus wasn't just another guy in Emily's life. He had dirt on her, serious dirt. And when he threatened to expose it, he vanished. No one has seen him since, and I think I know why." I sat back, processing the weight of her words. "Are you suggesting that Emily is involved in something much worse than I realized? What? Some kind of conspiracy?" Mrs. J nodded, her eyes dark with suspicion. "It's not just Emily. There's a network here, Alex. Jay, Emily, and others in positions of power. They've been pulling strings for years, manipulating people, destroying lives to protect their secrets. Marcus was just the first to go too far. But what he knew, I'm sure of it, could bring everything down." I felt a shiver run through me, a sense of unease taking hold. This was no longer just a story of heartbreak or betrayal. It was a web of corruption, deceit, and danger. I had unknowingly stepped into something much bigger than I could have imagined. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Mrs. J leaned back in her chair, her gaze intense. "I need you to trust me. We can't do this alone, but with your help, we can expose the truth. We can find Marcus and bring down the people who have been controlling your life, and many others like you." I didn't know if I was ready for what she was asking, but something deep inside me, maybe the remnants of that anger I had felt, or maybe the part of me that still wanted justice, spurred me forward. "I'll do it," I said, my decision final. For the next few weeks, I became part of Mrs. J's plan. We worked in the shadows, gathering information, contacting people who had been connected to Emily and Jay over the years. Some of them were afraid to speak out. Others were too entrenched in the lies to see the truth. But slowly, we began to piece together a chilling picture. Emily's manipulation wasn't just a personal vendetta. She had been carefully constructing a network, using her charm, her influence, and her connections to get what she wanted. Jay was only a pawn in her game, a means to an end. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how much of my own life had been molded by her subtle control. Every decision, every fight, every moment of doubt had been influenced by her carefully curated narrative. One evening, as I was reviewing some files at home, my phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from Mrs. J. "We found Marcus. He's alive, but he's in hiding. The time to expose them is now. Meet me tomorrow." My heart raced. The pieces were finally falling into place. I had been a part of something much darker than I had ever imagined, and now the truth was within reach. But the question lingered. Was I ready for it? Could I handle the revelations that were about to come crashing down around me? I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, everything would change. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a strange sense of purpose. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was part of the story, and the final chapter was about to be written. The next day came quicker than I expected. The weight of everything I had learned hung heavily over me, yet it no longer felt like a burden I couldn't carry. For the first time in months, I woke up with a sense of clarity, like a fog had finally lifted. The idea of facing the truth, however painful, was no longer something I feared. It was something I needed, something I owed to myself. When I arrived at the small, dimly lit cafe where I was meeting Mrs. J, the usual buzz of the coffee shop felt strangely muted. It was as if the world outside had frozen in anticipation, waiting for what was about to unfold. I spotted Mrs. J sitting at our usual corner, her gaze intent on something in front of her, her fingers tapping the edge of a folder. "You ready?" she asked when I sat down. I nodded, feeling the solid weight of resolve settle in my chest. "Ready as I'll ever be." We didn't waste time. Mrs. J passed me a photo of Marcus, alive, bruised but unbroken, sitting in a hidden room somewhere. His eyes were sharp, still full of defiance despite what he had been through. That look spoke to me louder than any words could have. He was still fighting, and I would too. I found him. He's been in hiding, but he knows everything, Mrs. J said. And he's willing to talk, but we need to act fast before they find out we've reached him. Her words resonated through me like a call to arms. I had spent so much time caught up in the whirlwind of betrayal, but now I understood something that I had missed before. This wasn't just about me. This was bigger. This was about everyone Emily had hurt, about the lives she had ruined for her own gain. It was about taking back control from the people who thought they could break others without consequence. "I'll help," I said, determination creeping into my voice. We can expose them. All of them. Mrs. J's lips curled into a knowing smile. Good. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. This is bigger than that. This is about justice. And it's about making sure no one else gets caught in their web. The next few weeks were a blur of planning and action. Every lead we followed brought us closer to Marcus and the ultimate truth. With each piece of the puzzle we uncovered, I felt my resolve strengthening. Emily and Jay weren't just villains in my personal story. They were a part of a larger, insidious system that used people like pawns in a game they thought they controlled. And now, I was fighting back. The moment of reckoning came when we finally confronted Jay and the rest of his network. It happened at the annual company gala, the perfect place for everything to come crashing down. The stage was set. Mrs. J had gathered irrefutable evidence, texts, emails, recordings, proof of the crimes they had all been involved in. As the gala unfolded, it was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Emily's facade cracked. Jay's poker face faltered. Everything they had worked so hard to protect began to crumble. I didn't need to say much. The truth had already spoken for itself. All I had to do was stand there, watching as their carefully constructed world fell apart. And yet, as Emily stormed out of the room, as Jay tried to salvage his reputation, I felt something within me shift. Relief, yes, but also something else. Strength. I wasn't just walking away from a toxic past. I was walking towards something better, something brighter. The pain, the anger, the confusion, they hadn't consumed me. I had used them as fuel to keep moving forward. That night, I didn't just lose the person I had loved. I lost the version of myself that had been defined by that love. But in losing that, I had gained something much more valuable, the knowledge that I could rebuild. I wasn't defined by my past. I was defined by how I rose from it. The next morning, I received a message from Mrs. J. She had sent Marcus back into hiding, but we had the evidence we needed to ensure justice. It wasn't over yet, but we were on the right path. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace with what lay ahead. I had faced the darkness and come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, and that was enough. I knew there would still be challenges, still moments when I would feel lost or unsure. But now, I understood something profound. The power to move forward was always mine to claim. And in that simple truth, I found my motivation to never give up, to keep fighting, to keep striving, and to keep living my life on my terms. The story wasn't over. It had only just begun, and I was ready for whatever came next. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really motivates me to keep going and create more stories like this for you.